All right, so welcome everyone to the Farm to Food Assistance Learning Lab informational call. I'm Andrew Carberry with the Wallace Center. I'm calling in from Little Rock, Arkansas, and joined by a few colleagues today. I want to give some quick introductions to them, and then we'll get started. So Ellie, you want to go?
Hi, everybody. Thank you all for joining us. This is a great crowd. My name's Ellie Baumstein, and I am supporting Andrew in leading the Learning Lab. I also work for the Wallace Center, and I'm calling in from Washington, D.C. And I guess Erin will hand it to you next.
Hey there, I'm Erin Pirro. I am a farm business consultant in Connecticut, and I'm calling in from a ferry in the Long Island Sound.
Thanks, Erin. And Myra, you want to go next?
Hi, everybody. I'm Myra Mostellan. I'm a business advisor, and I'm calling in from Springfield, Massachusetts.
All right, thanks. You'll hear more from Erin and Myra and Ellie as we go. The agenda for today is to give some background, a little history of how this opportunity came to be, why we're offering it, and why now. Then we'll give an overview of the Learning Lab, hopefully answer all the questions that came in when as you registered, and give a timeline. And then we'll have time for questions and answers. And aiming to keep this call to 30 minutes today. It might be more than that on your calendar, but we'll keep it to that, and we'll stick around as needed for questions. And with that, I'll hand it over to Ellie to get us started.
And as we're talking, if you want to throw questions into the chat box, we can keep an eye on that as it's going and answer them either as we go or at the end. So for those of you that are new to the Food Systems Leadership Network and the Wallace Center, we wanted to just share a little bit about the organization that's helping to pull together this learning lab. So Andrew and I both work for the Wallace Center, and our primary role is to serve on the backbone team of the Food Systems Leadership Network, which is a national network that's made up of a diverse community of leaders committed to overcoming food system challenges across the US. The network connects food systems leaders, people like you doing work on the ground to make community food systems more equitable. So we connect folks like you with resources, relationships, and power to help you realize equitable food systems that generate good food, health, and opportunity for all. So that's kind of the big picture goal of what we're doing here. And I'm just going to orient y'all a little bit to how we got to the idea of this learning lab and sort of why it's a really big part of the work we're doing right now. So we all remember those early days of the pandemic when you were seeing the news talk about both lines around the block at food banks and food pantries like we'd never seen before, and farmers who had to turn over their fields because their normal market channels were inaccessible to them because restaurants had closed or schools had closed. So there's these two sort of problems at the same time. And at the Food Systems Leadership Network, we were hearing incredible stories from our friends on the ground who were solving both of those problems at once, that were connecting food assistance efforts to those farmers so that the farmers could sell into those anti-hunger efforts rather than having to turn that food over or give it away for free. So we thought this was really exciting to hear that anti-hunger and farm viability were kind of being talked about together as opposed to things that maybe had been separate or directly in conflict. So it was just really exciting to think, hang on a second, farmers can still get a fair price for their product, and that food can be free to people experiencing hunger. So this just felt like it was really growing and bubbling up all over the US. It had been happening before. Lots of brilliant people had been buying local food and giving it to anti-hunger efforts for a long time, but it felt like the scale and prevalence of that kind of action was really growing with the pandemic. And the federal government got in the game and started supporting those kinds of efforts as well, first through the Farmer to Families Food Box, and then through the local food purchase assistance program, which you guys might be familiar with. That's going on right now. So we at the Wallace Center and at the Food Systems Leadership Network thought this is a really big opportunity. People in the network are telling us that this work is really important to them and that they're trying to understand and grow it. And so we wanted to both research it, what's going on with this, how does it work, who's paying for it, who's involved, and also help support it. So we currently have 2 grants that we're working on right now to do that research, really in-depth dive into what we call Farm to Food Assistance, or F2FA, because we're a nonprofit, so we have to use an acronym. So we're researching that farm to food assistance work and also supporting it through things like this research that we did on Farmers to Families Food Box and research that we are doing right now on local food purchase assistance programs, and then also through support. And the support looks like both this learning lab. We also have a monthly community of practice where we bring folks together to talk about their farm to food assistance work and share stories and learnings with each other about what's working and what's not. And then we're doing a lot of storytelling also to help lift up these ideas, lift up folks that are really innovating in this field, and hopefully eventually get lots more attention and funding from Congress and other kinds of funders as well. So that's just a little bit about why we're here, why we think this is a really opportune moment to support this farm to food assistance work and sort of some of the motivation behind this learning lab. And now I think Andrew's going to talk a little more about what that actually is.
All right, yeah, thanks, Ellie. So the Learning Lab will be a 12-month experience for 8 teams to support them with the financial and technical assistance to strengthen their farm to food assistance programs. And farm to food assistance is the general category, but that does include both local food purchase assistance programs and non-LFPA. There's so many acronyms. And the applications are open now through July 10th. So that's just the quick overview. The goals of Learning Lab, building on what Ellie mentioned, are to build the field of farm to food assistance through capacity building for these 8 teams that are in the Learning Lab. And that will be done through peer learning, through calls to get peer support from each other, access to advisors, who you hear from in just a moment, and to get flexible funding for these programs, especially to set up for sustainability. So to have some more flexible, funding to fund creative strategies and things that will help set you up for the long term. This will also be a learning opportunity to gain a deeper understanding of farm to food assistance programs overall, like what really makes them work, what have people figured out across the country on these, what are the challenges that people are facing in common that could be, and how people have overcome those, how could that be shared more broadly, and how do we set these up for sustainability with, there's a huge influx of funding right now. How can we set up for really transformational change and not let it be just transactions of the funding comes, food is moved to needed communities, but then when it's gone, it's gone. So we want to set up for long-term success. What the teams will get is a $20,000 grant to support their work, an in-person retreat that will be, we'll use a learning journey approach to that, where we're visiting a site that has a farm to food assistance program, and all the teams in the lab, we can see that site and look at that as a model of one program, and how can we all learn from that and analyze aspects that are adaptable to other areas. Also support from advisors, that you'll have one-on-one and group training from advisors, peer support that I mentioned, and then also communications, like how do you build the case for the program to your funders, to your partners, and others. And so I'll turn it over to the advisors. Let's see, Myra, if you want to introduce yourself and just share a little bit more of your expertise and how you could support the teams.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Andrew. My name is Myra Marcellin. I operating out of Springfield, Massachusetts. Currently, I am a financial business advisor at the Mass Ag Innovation Center, which is housed under the Franklin County CDC located in Greenfield, Mass. So in this role, I provide technical business assistance to farmers and food producers around value added. And I provide these services across the state of Massachusetts. Prior to that, I was a senior loan officer at Farm Credit East. I spent more than 25 years working with the farmers in Massachusetts and Northern Connecticut, supporting hundreds of small and mid-sized farm businesses, helping them realize their business goals. And in that role, I also helped many beginning young farmers launch their businesses and then fitting them with the right financial solutions loans and other financial services, such as payroll, consultant, tax prep services, et cetera. My areas of expertise, I help to identify viable business opportunities for small and mid-sized businesses. I analyze and interpret financial information, which includes deep dives into costs, revenue streams, and other business financials, such as inventory management. Try to address challenges and break down barriers to accessing capital. And then I have a good understanding of the financial underpinning of nonprofit organizations. And most recently, over the last maybe 3 years or so, I've been helping to work on defining what racial justice, equity, inclusion should look like in the food and ag sector. So that's something I look at what challenges businesses are facing and try to work around providing solutions and strategies around those issues. So I turn it over to Erin.
Thanks very much, Myra. My name is Erin Pirro, and I love helping businesses of all kinds figure out the story that their numbers are telling them about their business and how it operates. And from that, we can make a whole lot of better decisions, because we can do that with confidence once we know what that story is. So if you're looking for an expansion, if you're looking for a change of some kind, if you're looking to bring on a team member and trying to figure out how are we going to afford them, we'll figure out how we're going to afford them. And solving that puzzle is something that I'm super excited about because I love seeing businesses grow. That's what my passion is. I also have a passion for automating accounting systems, helping them work even better. So if it's work nobody really wants to do, how can we take advantage of some of the technology to make the whole process work better so we can spend the time doing the things that we love?
Awesome. Thank you, Erin and Myra, for sharing, and yeah, all the expertise that you have. And Paku and Allison could not join us today, but I just put a link to their bios that are on our site where you can see more about their backgrounds as well. And so these 4 individuals will be serving as advisors to the teams in the cohort, both providing group assistance like trainings based on what the teams needed, what group needs are, trainings overall, and then also one-on-one support to the teams. So just a couple more slides to answer, I know, questions that a lot of people had. Team expectations are to commit to full participation in the lab and activities, including one person attending the in-person retreat and monthly calls of the Learning Lab, completing baseline and final surveys that are part of the research component that'll be about your program, about the farmers you support, the amount of food, where it's going, completing case study interviews, and that's part of the communication support in telling your story and tailoring that to your audiences. We've heard a lot of people are, in doing this work, are just so busy doing the work, they're not telling the story and able to do that and step back. So the case studies will help folks to do that. And then also participating or sharing on a farm to food assistance community of practice call that Elizabeth put in the chat earlier, and we can speak to in just a little bit. So eligibility, the main criteria is that teams have to be operating a farm to food assistance program, currently implementing one. And that does include USDA's local food purchase assistance, but it's not only those. So it could be those that are funded through philanthropy, other forms of donations, not just through that USDA funding. And the type of organization is really wide open. Like we listed here, all the ones we could think of that are relevant. Nonprofits, faith-based organizations, mutual aid, cooperatives, state and tribal governments. So the organization type shouldn't be a limiter on whether you're eligible. It's really about doing a farm to food assistance program. And the selection criteria, so out of the eligible programs, I think we've got 100 people on the call right now. There's only room for 8 teams in this. So, how do we pick who is this the best opportunity for and shape the best cohort? We'll be looking for teams that are paying farmers a fair market value for their purchases and not requesting donations as the core part of the model, demonstrating commitment to racial equity and centering community-driven solutions, creating long-term solutions that would go beyond, current funding or short-term funding. Being willing to share some data, being open about that so that we can learn as a group together and contribute to research on these programs to make the case, for yours and nationwide for this type of work. And how you would propose to use the grant funds. So that's flexible dollars that you can share what your ideas would be on how to set your program and your partners up for long-term success. So those will be when we are reviewing applications, the criteria that the Wallace Center and the advisors will be reviewing and selecting the cohort. The timeline, applications are open now through July 10th, so early July. Then will be team selection and contracting in July and August, so getting all the agreements set up, solidifying the teams. And then we'll be just getting to know each other in the first couple of calls, teams introducing each other and sharing the work. We'll have an in-person retreat November 1st to 3rd, and that will be for the primary applicant, or one representative per team with the advisors and Wallace Center staff. The location is not determined yet. We will share that as soon as we know, but we're looking at central or western part of the US. And then the Learning Lab will go through June of next year. Here's more of a written out timeline. And so after that retreat in November, there'll be several calls where the advisors will do more training, more sharing of their expertise as we get started. And then after that, we'll be looking for participants to lead, to bring a challenge or bring something they're working on to the group to share and then work through together, with support from advisors and everyone else. And that will go through June, and then there will be, that end of program survey and the case studies on your program to share learnings out.